Greetings. I hope this video finds you well and prospering. Hey, check this out. I saw a video yesterday. Living overseas is cheaper than the United States. I thought about that. That's limited thinking. I don't want anyone that I know to think that that's the only scenario. So I figured I would post some content on how that is not true for a lot of people. Living overseas is cheaper. If you go and watch a couple of expat videos, people who move back to the United States, yeah, most of them will tell you that living overseas is pretty much the same, or a little bit more or a little bit less. It's right in there. But that's here nor there. I just know that to be the case. But I'm going to tell you my personal experiences to where I know that's not the real deal. Living overseas is cheaper, because I lived overseas in the Philippines for 2 years. I know the cost of that. Here is what I did. I was a young man. I got married at 19 years old. I was 19 years old. My wife at the time, she was 18. So we got married 18, 19. I was in the United States Air Force. I did my time in the Air Force, and this was during the time where the military was downsizing. So they were asking people to take the early out. So I did my 4 years. I said, okay, I'm going to re-enlist. So I re-enlisted on my second 4 years. And they were asking for people to get out early. So I had the option to get out early. Honorable discharge, get out early. Excuse me. So at the time, I was like back and forth with, like, if I test and make E4 staff sergeant, it was a transitional time. Then they was getting rid of buck sergeant stuff. Either way, so it's E3, E4 in that area. So at the time, for simplicity of the video, I said, if I test and get a promotion, I'll stay in the Air Force. I said, if not, I'm going to move back home to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I had positioned myself to become a police officer. So listen, I'm always setting myself up for the next move. I said, okay, if I don't test high enough to get my promotion, this was my first test, I probably would have got it on my second or third try, because you gain points the more and more time in service. Time and grade, time in service. So I would have gained more points just staying in the military. So eventually I would have got the promotion. But at the time, I was at the crossroads on my second enlistment, 5 years in. I'm like, okay, let me test for the Milwaukee Police Department. So I went and tested. Out of hundreds of folks, I was number 6 on the list for the Milwaukee Police Academy. So I had that option. And listen, I'm showing my wife at the time, listen, I got this shit figured out. Like, we're going to be good as a family. So we had just had our first son. It's like 91. He was born 91. I got out the Air Force in 92. So the test scores came back for the promotion, and I was a little bit short on making staff sergeant. So I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to go to my commander and go ahead and get this early out. Take this early out. You know, government was downsizing the military. So I'm going to take this early out. My commander said, show me that you're going to have a job when you get out and I'll let you out. I said, all right, Colonel. I showed him my selection letter for the Milwaukee Police Department. I was number 6 on the list. He said, okay, you can have the early out. Took the early out, 5 years in Air Force. Went to Milwaukee. I couldn't get in the academy right away. It was like a 1.5 year wait. But I was okay because early out, the president had signed some bill. You could do like a year on unemployment. So I wasn't tripping. I was like, okay, I could draw unemployment and we'll be good. Stay in my parents' basement, you know, do it like that and draw unemployment. I really wasn't the unemployment guy. So I started studying even before I got out the Air Force. While I was studying to take the police officer test, I was studying to get my CDL. So yeah, this is where I'm gonna come back to. Excuse me, living overseas is not cheaper than the United States. I got situated with the family. We got out the military, moved home to Milwaukee, staying in my mother's basement. Staying in my parents' basement. Excuse me, the wife, and our newborn son. I started calculating in my head, you know, what the vision was. So, okay, we're going to stay here a year. You know, I could work, unemployment run out, whatever. But that wasn't fun to me. I mean, it wasn't a part of my vision. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get us a house. My wife at the time, she was pressuring me get a single family home. I said, oh no. So we're getting a duplex. She said, I don't want no duplex. I said, listen, for economic reasons, and we had some tight moments in the Air Force. I mean, like, we got paid on the first, we had $25 to the next payday. So I had all kind of hustles in the Air Force. I was cleaning houses. You know, when families ship off, they had to have the houses cleaned. So I had cleaning service. I was a canine handler. So I was training people dogs for money. The wife would go work at donut shop at night. Yeah, we was hustling in the military, believe me. So this is why I was like, you know what? I said, no, we're going to buy a duplex. Milwaukee is great for owning rental property. And this is the thing where I say, overseas is not cheaper. In Milwaukee, I kept the rent so low on our duplex. We lived in the bottom, rented out the upper flat of this duplex. Listen, I kept the rent $400. The mortgage was $600. I really could, when I rented it out Section 8, $800. That paid the entire mortgage. So here in the United States, you can have rental property that would just, your cost of living just great. So I think it comes down to how creative you are and how focused you are, and using your imagination and using your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So with the duplex, listen, me and my family were able to, it got to a point where I didn't have to rent out the upstairs anymore. You know, we started having more kids. Hey, I was making more money. I had got into trucking during the police officer stuff. And then I eventually got into trucking and stayed in trucking for 23 years. But I was owner operator owning trucks. Eventually, I didn't even need to rent upstairs. The income from the trucks was like, hey, we could take over the whole house. So, but that's another story. That's another discussion. So Here in the United States, if you don't mind being a landlord, man, look, yeah, you can own rental property overseas, but it's just so much easier to do it here, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. Yeah, man, get your rental property first. That was just me, and that would be my advice to anyone. My son and his fiance just bought rental property. Greatest move, because he thought like me. Dad got the rental property, and my dad regrets buying rental property when he first got out the military. So that stuck in my mind too. Secondly, here in the United States, us copper-colored people, the brown-skinned people, a lot of your family has land in the South. This is well documented in the historical record. A lot of us have land in the South. That's why I had the camera facing the way it's facing. As a child, I wanted to live here in Alabama. Although I grew up in Milwaukee, I always wanted to move down here to Alabama as a child, where my grandparents, this is my parents are from. But my dad went north, like a lot of copper-colored people went north for work out of the South, the Southern migrant workers. So a lot of them went up to Milwaukee, Detroit, New York. You know, they went up, and industrial boom, and they all went and making their money. So my grandfather had these 10 acres right here. This is where we need to start focusing ourselves back on generational wealth. Listen, land is priceless. So overseas, you can get you some land. But before you do that, I would check and see if your family has land somewhere. Because I took advantage, and I was always mentally thinking I'm going to take advantage of this land that my grandparents left here. At the time, my grandparents was living here, and both sets of my grandparents own land. So I have air property on both sets of my grandparents, both sets of my parents' side. This is the spot. 10 private acres. My dad lives here. My sister lives here. My auntie lives here. It's like, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses on 10 acres. So much of it is not even being used. Just keep the grass cut on it. 10 acres is huge. 10 acres, you can build a subdivision. So, look, I compared that to going overseas, trying to purchase land and all that. I made a decision. I mean, I'm years along the road. I said, you know what? I'm going to move on the land paid for. My dad cut me a deed. I said, okay, that's the biggest expense is land and a house. You get your house. I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to live in a travel trailer while I build a tiny home. That was it. I said, I got 2 travel trailers now, a tiny home. I said, I'm going to pay cash for all of this stuff. So it worked out great. Somebody needed that trailer sold. So I just took over the payments. They didn't want to mess up their credit. So that first trailer I just took over the payments. The other stuff is cash deals and trades. That's another discussion. I'll get off into that another video. But this video, I live on 10 acres. That stuff paid for. So I'm not paying for land. I'm not paying rent or mortgage. Actually, I'm charging rent for one of the trailers, the trailer next to the tiny home. I'm charging rent. And that helps fund my traveling overseas. So yeah, to say that it's cheaper to live overseas than the United States, you haven't really weighed your options. All right. Hey, like, share, subscribe. I'll get with you all later. Peace.